Boy. Well, that was certainly a movie. Alright, now how the hell am I going to spin this into content? A review. Nah, that's too stale. Venting. To who? Dom's been hiding out in the shadow realm ever since we talked about that Shane Dawson movie in Keyson.
Come on. Slash, damn you. What?
Oh, I'm sorry, Cherry Blossom. Did I interrupt your COD mobile again?
DMC Mobile, and for your information, I kinda suck.
No shit. Have you watched your own gameplay videos? You make Dean Takahashi look like Dr. Disrespect.
Says the guy with almost 400 subscribers yet rarely breaks 10 views per video.
Oh, you want to go down this road with me, you son of... Wait, why do you sound so echoey?
No particular reason. Why?
Are you calling me from the shed?
So, what if I am?
You stole Lily's chocolates again, didn't you?
So, what if I did?
Damn it, Keyson, if I've told you once, I've told you 100,000 times. You don't steal a pregnant woman's snacks. It just never ends well.
You've never had a girlfriend, so how the hell would you know?
You didn't have to live with my sister throughout her entire pregnancy. I stole her candy one time. She turned my underwear into a straitjacket. It's not a joke, dude. I spent a week and a half looking like a minister from the Monty Python School of Silly Walks.
Well, I'll be sure to keep that in mind. Now, why the hell did you call me anyway?
I just got out of Godzilla -1.
Stop right there. I'm in.
I haven't even said what we're doing yet.
You just got out of a Japanese Godzilla movie and your first move was to call the kaiju expert. I think I can figure out what we're doing.
Alright, fucking let's do it. Hey guys, it's been a while since we've just done a full-on movie discussion, no live streams, and our endless rambling within.
Yep.
But here we are, just a few months away from the release of Godzilla X Kong, or Godzilla Kong, however the hell you pronounce the title of that movie.
The new Godzilla X Kong, the new empire.
And you know the critics are not going to be, are kind of not going to be polite about it. They're going to shit on it because it's not like the movie that we're talking about today, which is the latest of Toho's Godzilla films, the Japanese Godzilla films, and, in a manner of speaking, a reboot of the Toho Godzilla franchise. Do I have that correct?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, see, Keyson is here primarily because he's the kaiju expert between the two of us. I am a very casual Godzilla viewer.
And that's okay, we love you anyway.
Not that y'all should hold that against me. So I was on the fence about seeing this when it came out, and I wasn't even sure if it was going to be playing in my theater, because my theater is very weird in that it gets a lot of live, it does get a lot of, like, Fathom events, live shows, like stage plays and operas and the riff track stuff, and it gets a lot of indies and a lot of Bollywood movies, but I wasn't sure whether or not the theater in my area was going to be getting this until, like, a month after it had released in America. I recall asking you directly, would you recommend this to a to a casual kaiju viewer or a non-fan of Toho Godzilla, and you gave me a hard yes.
Yep, I'll be honest. A budget of $15 million. I wasn't exactly expecting much, but I came out. My mind was fucking blown, especially the opening scene, which very clearly took inspiration from Jurassic Park's T-Rex.
Yeah, I'm looking at the IMDb, and I understand that Takashi Yamazaki, the director of Godzilla -1, took a lot of influence from not just prior Godzilla movies, but also Spielberg movies, especially Jaws, I'm sure we could throw Jurassic Park in there. He kind of acts like a Tyrannosaur in a couple of scenes.
Well, his non-mutated form was definitely inspired by sauropods. It's worth noting that Takashi Yamazaki also directed, from a few years ago, Godzilla theme park ride in Japan. Basically, he designed the Godzilla for that, and the -1 design is basically slightly altered version of that particular design, which looks like the perfect blend of 90s and Legendary's Monsterverse Godzilla. And he also directed a movie from the late 2000s called Always Sunset on 3rd Street. There was a scene where it showed Godzilla destroying Japan. I think a guy in the movie was writing a book, and then some guy told him that story's too much like Godzilla. You might not want to try publishing that. Of course, there were scenes in some of the Millennium era Godzilla films where when he was swimming underwater, he was portrayed in CGI, but the rest of the time he was portrayed by a man in a suit. But it was the first time Godzilla was fully portrayed in CGI.
That's something that I was kind of iffy about when I had heard that they were going full CGI on Godzilla, because wasn't he, like, help me out here, when did they stop going with the bodysuits and just decide to full CG Godzilla?
I believe if we're talking Toho, I believe that would be 2016 Shin Godzilla. Looks like a guy in a suit, but that was pure CGI, my friend.
Okay. I was wondering if it was this or if it was Shin Godzilla, because I remember hearing one of the two was when they decided to just go full CGI, which I'm kind of weird on. Like, I'm kind of in the James Rolfe boat of practical effects trump CGI, and I haven't seen Shin Godzilla. This was my first exposure to Toho's portrayal of Godzilla. Prior to this, I've only seen Roland Emmerich's portrayal and the way he was portrayed in the Monsterverse.
Godzilla -1's design is actually a lot smaller than the legendary Monsterverse design. Like, it was scaled down a bit to more match the size of the Japanese 1954 original Godzilla.
Which, makes sense.
Which makes sense, because I always thought of this as more of kind of like an almost sort of remake of the original Godzilla.
You consider the original one came out all the way back in, 53, 54?
54. And the American version came out it came out in the United States in 1956, but it was a mainly American re-edited version, and they threw in the guy who played Perry Mason as a reporter who basically narrates the whole movie. Ironically, 30 years later, in 1984, they would come out with a direct sequel called Return of Godzilla, which a year later would get a release in America titled Godzilla 1985, which was another chopped down production where they added American scenes and shit. And guess who came back? Steve Martin. No, not that Steve Martin, or the guy who played Steve Martin in the original.
Right.
Of course, in that movie, he couldn't really go by his name from the original, not the original, but the American version of the original. Like, he couldn't go by Steve Martin, so he spends the entire movie being referred to as Mr. Martin. Because ever since The Jerk came out, he couldn't use his full name.
Right.
I borrowed that joke from Brandon Tenold's review of Godzilla 85.
Funny thing is, because I had absolutely no interest in watching Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, I'm just so burned out on superhero movies, I can't tell you. At least
I'm watching it because of Amber Heard.
At least the current crop of superhero movies, like My Give a Fuck a Meter, is in the negatives.
So that movie, My Give a Fuck Meter, was in a negative anyway, because Warner Brothers had every chance to fully get rid of Amber Heard, yet they didn't. And yet they have the nerve to wonder, why is our movie failing? I don't know which is bigger, their dickhead personalities or their goddamn egos.
What sets off the metal detectors first? The lead in your ass or the shit in your brains?
So, I originally was not very much interested in seeing this, even if it was in my area, because I had no intention of seeing Aquaman 2. I was under the assumption that the last movie I would watch that I would go to a theater to see in 2023 would end up being John Woo's Silent Night, which you absolutely should watch. I think it's on video on demand right now.
I thought it was good.
It's not my favorite John Woo movie ever, but it's a goddamn gem. But that ended up not being the case. Sorry, what?
I'm sorry. Didn't he direct a video game too that he played on the channel?
He was a producer on Stranglehold with Chow Yun-fat.
Didn't you play it on the channel?
Yeah, I did that as a video series a while back, and then I just replayed it as a oneer in November.
Yeah, I was about to say, I thought You did?
That wound up not being the case, as it turned out, because my theater also got Hayao Miyazaki's latest movie, The Boy and the Heron. Not my favorite Miyazaki movie ever, but it was a decent enough time. A week after I had seen The Boy and the Heron, I wound up catching a screening off of your recommendation, catching a screening of Godzilla -1. It actually came to my area, to my shock and amazement.
Fuck yeah.
Which is wild to me. We got Godzilla -1, but Martin Scorsese's The Irishman never got it got a limited theatrical release, but we did not get a screening of it in Cape Girardeau, and that's fucking weird.
Yeah, that's a certified bra moment. Then again, Martin Scorsese films, you'll have to take at least one or two bathroom breaks anyway. So how fucking long they are.
I mean,
that's longer than Pierre Jackson's films. Good God.
I mean, I took an epic piss before I went into Avatar 2, and neither I nor my mother wound up having to get up to use the restroom at any point.
I made the first time seeing Godzilla -1, I made the mistake of not emptying my bladder before the movie, and I struggled to hold it in the last 20 minutes.
Oh, I can imagine.
Like I'm not missing a single minute of this goddamn movie.
Right. And this is a hell of a movie. It's the one thing I really recall you saying after I had asked you about it and asking if you would recommend me watching it or not. I remember one of the first things you said to me was that I would most likely say that it was the movie Godzilla 2014 should have been.
Fuck you! I was right! Fuck you! I was right! Fuck you! I was right!
So one of my biggest problems with Godzilla 2014, and I mean, I'm not a fan of Gareth Edwards anyway. I feel like he's very much like J.J. Abrams in that he really wants to be Spielberg, but has absolutely none of Spielberg's talent.
He just sits there stroking it, trying to convince us how clever he is. I mean, the only reason I enjoyed the 2014 Godzilla was because, well, simply, it was Godzilla. But the problem was, every time the monster action began, it always cut back to the goddamn humans. I don't give a fuck about Kick-Ass and the one Olsen sister that didn't do drugs. I want to see giant monsters fucking each other up.
The only Olsen sister who still has a career.
Basically.
Like, I could have forgiven that.
I shouldn't make too much fun, because I'm a former addict myself, but it's still funny, ironic.
Which I could have forgiven had they not nonchalantly killed off Bryan Cranston less than 45 minutes into the goddamn movie. He was the only character in the movie that I gave a fuck about.
Especially since around the time the movie came out, Breaking Bad had just finished up. You know how that went.
It's like, okay, cool, we've got Bryan Cranston. He's from one of the hottest shows on primetime television right now. Let's fucking use him. We're just gonna give the rest of the movie over to standard McDefault. The problem with Godzilla 2014 was that it wanted to be a hybrid of really fun, bombastic monster movie with a compelling human drama. And we did not get that with Godzilla 2014. We got a bunch of bland characters and an epic battle between monsters that the movie had absolutely no interest in showing us.
I remember like 5 or 6 years ago, we were talking about when you finally got around to viewing the movies to watch Kong Skull Island. I remember you saying something about how every time they did that, I was like your girl whacking you in the nuts with a rubber hammer before you climax.
Exactly.
Me and the rest of the Godzilla community wanted this movie to see a giant monster fight, but every time a monster fight happened, it just cut to the next scene. I mean, that's the difference between Godzilla -1 and Godzilla 2014, because in Godzilla -1, you actually find yourself giving a shit about the humans.
Well, this movie starts off like right at the end of World War II. You have this kamikaze pilot who was supposed to die quote-unquote honorably for his country, but fled from his duty to this island
Odo Island.
where they had plane mechanics ready.
And if the name Odo Island rings a bell to anyone else in the Godzilla community, it's because that's the name of the island that they went to in the original Godzilla. Neat way to tie it to the original. But this is not connected to the original. It's a full-on reboot. Like, the original was set in the mid-1950s. This one's set at the tail end of World War II and in the months following World War II.
The movie opens in 1945. I think it's a few months prior to America dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, let's talk about that island scene. Like, we already mentioned that he fled his duty as a kamikaze pilot. He made up lies to get out of having to go back out. And then later that night, well, actually no, before that, there was a scene where a bunch of deep sea fish are floating dead on the surface, which is your first clue that something isn't right about this place.
Yeah, which apparently that is the movie's telltale sign that Godzilla is about to surface, is that there are deep sea fish floating up near the surface, which is, I thought was a neat little sort of a red flag. It almost kind of functioned like the barrels in Jaws. You know, that was your indication that the shark was coming.
Really? I thought it was the dun 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 dun.
Well, the John Williams music helped.
Later that night, a thunderous roar is heard, and I tell you what, before the movie came out in America, there was a rumor that there was going to be two Godzillas in the film. One was the irradiated Godzilla destroying Japan, and the other one being a non-radiated Godzilla that was going to try and bring his brother back into the ocean. But the star of that rumor comes in the form of Godzilla's non-mutated form coming out of nowhere and wrecking that camp's entire shit.
Yeah, he just kind of blew in. It was kind of like watching you brought up Jurassic Park. It was like watching the two Tyrannosaurs tear up their campsite in The Lost World.
I thought the same thing.
Except it's just one.
Mommy's very angry.
Obviously, they try to fire away at Godzilla, which doesn't... Obviously, he notices the bullets hitting him, but all it seems to do is piss him off. You notice how Godzilla doesn't eat them, he just picks them up and just yeets them up into the air?
Yeah.
The kamikaze pilot tries to get to his plane so he can use the gun to kill it, but I guess because of some form of PTSD, he freezes, and of course, at least the rest of his squad getting slaughtered. And him along with another pilot are the only two survivors. And when he returns to Japan, he's dealing with a lot of dishonor. But all that's about to change when he meets a young woman with a baby.
Yeah, he ends up with a very severe case of not only PTSD, but survivor's guilt. I don't get it myself, but I guess that was a Japanese mindset. That was the best way to die, was that you died for your country no matter what. And it's like, I understand patriotism, but at some point, common sense and self-preservation have got to kick in. The fact that people actually chastised him for that, I just found very odd. But again, that's a Japanese thing.
Apparently, I guess he brought dishonor just by breathing. But
our pilot, Koichi, ends up meeting this woman, has an orphan baby. They fall in love. They're trying to raise it, and they're trying to raise this girl. And he's, trying to live his life,
provide,
try to find some peace while he's working as a minesweeper.
Wait a minute, this isn't the game I'm familiar with.
Right.
This version looks cooler than the one I used to play on computer.
Yeah.
You get to shoot the mines.
Yeah, this is a version of Minesweeper you could actually beat.
Right. But eventually, there's actually a scene where it shows the bombs being dropped, and a very subtle hint that Godzilla was affected by the radiation of those bombs. And over the next months to a year, he's attacking a bunch of American vessels, and some very MonsterVerse-like shots of his dorsal fins coming out of the water.
I mean, there's a scene in this movie where he is chasing him, and it might as well have been a scene from Jaws. Just the way he's kind of gliding across the water.
It's like like, holy shit. I love Godzilla, but I was genuinely terrified for those people.
So was I.
There's also the part where they try to use the discarded mines on him. Like, he's barely affected by the first mine, but they try to blow up the second mine that's in his mouth, but somehow the wire's disconnected, so the guy shoots it, and it blows off part of Godzilla's cheek, and it's then shown that Godzilla has Wolverine levels of regeneration.
Right? It was like, you're all mega fucked now.
Marvel Comics wants to know your location, Toho.
Right? And that wasn't a little scratch. It blew off half his fucking head.
Oh, wait till you fucking see the end of this shit, motherfuckers.
Right?
But anyway, Godzilla eventually makes landfall in Japan, and it's basically what you'd expect.
Yeah, just...
Like, there's these two people who... There's several people who are very stupidly, I might add, on top of a building, narrating his every move. But then Godzilla clumsily walks to the side of the building like the bumbly dumbass he is. And it's like, well, that's what you get for not running when you had the fucking chance.
They were on the fucking radio people. I guess radio journalists or whatever.
They have a death wish in kaiju movies.
Clearly. Maybe that's why I don't watch so many of them, because I just look at the crowds of people dying and I'm like, y'all are fucking stupid.
Dude, there was a scene in the original where two or three guys there was one or two guys in a radio tower, and they're doing the same thing these people were. Godzilla comes over and noms on the tower, and the tower falls over.
That is even dumber.
Like this Godzilla seemed to enjoy hurting the people.
And that's something else I loved about this movie and I noticed there's kind of a divide on how people feel Godzilla should be portrayed. Some people feel he should be portrayed as just this terrifying, unstoppable force of nature that clearly does not exist for the betterment of humankind. Some people are fine with him being portrayed as a hero or an anti-hero.
You said anti-hero, and immediately the MonsterVerse Godzilla came to mind.
Very much.
I mean, it was very clearly hinted at in King of the Monsters when...
Jesus. Good thing he's on our side.
For now.
And I didn't even feel this way watching the Roland Emmerich movie, but more often than not, I don't take these movies seriously at all. This was the first time I've watched a Godzilla movie, of the few that I have seen, where I genuinely considered him to be terrifying.
Right.
He's fucking tail-sweeping buildings, he's nomming on subway cars, and his atomic breath. Jesus Christ.
His atomic breath caused the equivalent to a fucking nuclear bomb explosion.
It was. Shockwave and all.
This Godzilla literally is a walking atomic bomb.
Yeah,
But something interesting to note, in this incarnation, using his atomic breath actually affects him, so he has to regenerate first before using it again.
Yeah, which I found very interesting. It was like, oh, he can't just do it in perpetuity. Well, that's
almost a silver lining for these people.
Yeah, it's like, that's going to create an opening that they're going to exploit later on.
Anyway, Godzilla comes along, fucks everybody's shit up again. Noriko, I think the girl's name is.
Yep.
It seems like she's a casualty. A plan's currently being formed to stop Godzilla. And what's their solution? I'll tell you this much: it's not an oxygen destroyer.
Right, like in King of the Monsters.
And the original Godzilla. Funny thing about the original Godzilla series, in the 1995 film Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, it's revealed that the oxygen destroyer who killed the first Godzilla in 1954 actually caused those micro crustacean organisms to mutate, which eventually led to create Destoroyah. Which means by using the oxygen destroyer in King of the Monsters, they basically set up this monster in the MonsterVerse. And I'm hoping that he finally shows up if they make another Godzilla film after X-Kong.
Yeah, or it could show up in the New Empire as a supporting force to to Scar King, kind of like Rodan was for Ghidorah.
Yeah, it's like, hey kid, the real villain isn't Scar King or Shimo. It's fucking Destroya.
Right.
Like, supposedly Shimo's the world-ending threat because it's allegedly rumored that in the Monsterverse, he's the Titan that caused the Ice Age. And it's also believed that he might be the Titan who helped Godzilla freeze King Ghidorah. That'd be an interesting way to tie in previous films.
Yeah.
I still want to see Michael Dougherty's Godzilla BC film.
Ooh.
That'd be a hell of a ride. But, back to -1.
Their master plan to take out Godzilla is to kill him through explosive decompression. They have a pilot with Koichi, and they can't really use gunships because post-war Japan, pretty much all of their ships and all of their planes were decommissioned.
Basically, all their shit is scrapped.
Yeah, so it wasn't just their military that was on it. It wasn't just the Japanese economy that was on its knees in post-war Japan. It was everything. No, they weren't even left with means of defending themselves from foreign threats. Thanks for that, General MacArthur.
Yeah.
But I don't really blame him for that. I mean, they kind of fucked themselves over on that front.
Basically. But anyway, they eventually find the pilot, who is not exactly happy to see Koichi.
Well, he's actually a mechanic. The only guy who survived on Odo Island, apart from Koichi.
Like I said, not happy to see Koichi.
Who can blame
Koichi eventually convinces them to help.
But with his help, they managed to fix this broken down prototype fighter that Japan did not mass produce for their military. He manages to load it with enough explosive to level a city block.
And the plan was to fly it into Godzilla's mouth. Koichi patches things up with his mechanic. Final battle is underway, and I gotta say, my favorite parts about this movie are the shots of Godzilla walking on land. The scene where Godzilla follows the plane into the water, it's an obvious callback to the scene of Godzilla walking along the shore of the island in Godzilla 2000. I think you can watch that one on Hulu. Just Godzilla with his big-ass T-Rex feet.
It's not just the story about this movie that works, and it's not just the acting or the effects that works, because this movie has some ridiculously good visual effects for a movie that was produced on a budget of less than $15 million US.
You gotta admit, that's impressive with a lot of these movies going between 100 million, 200 million to almost $1 billion budget.
I think the most expensive movies produced are the Avengers, the last couple Avengers movies, and they were done on like 400 million and above a piece. But
it's some of the CGI in those films are atrocious.
Well, the last couple Avengers movies had some really good CGI. It's just that a large chunk of that budget went to the actors. I mean, I think Robert Downey Jr.'s salary for it was either Infinity War or Endgame. His salary for it was $70 million, which is insane.
Well, I'll admit there's actually one shot in Godzilla -1 where the CGI was kind of dodgy, and that was from Koichi's nightmare where he looks outside a door and Godzilla's foot comes down.
Yeah,
the CGI in that scene was a little dodgy.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments where I feel like they could have given it a quick touch up, or it could have been better, but it's not.
It wasn't horrible. It was just noticeable. It doesn't ruin the movie, basically, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's not just the effects and the acting and the story, but this movie has some ridiculously gorgeous cinematography. Just the framing and the shot composition and the use of muted colors and lighting to help convey emotion. And it's like, it should be basic to a lot of filmmakers, but for some reason there's a lot of directors in Hollywood right now that are really not putting any thought into their visuals, into shot composition and all that. And it's like, here's Japan doing it, a nation whose cinematic output is primarily rooted in their animation department, and they're doing it better than mega blockbusters from Hollywood. What the fuck?
Right.
They're also not deliberately dimming the framing to hide the fact that their CGI looks like sub 3DO cutscene quality.
Are you serious? Godzilla 2014 on DVD still looks dark as shit.
Ugh. Which is odd, because when you do see the CGI in that movie, it's goddamn great. So it's like, why do you choose to dim the framing on so many scenes, Gareth Edwards? Or is that supposed to be an aesthetic choice, you blithering hack?
Also, one thing I've always questioned, like, when Godzilla mutated after getting hit by the atomic bombs, I want to know how his head and mouth got smaller.
Right.
Obviously, to look like a more traditional Godzilla design.
Dude, you say that and I immediately started thinking of that Carlos Mencia bit where he's talking about how as soon as Bin Laden was identified as one of the 9/11 attackers, he got a phone call from Japan. You screw up big time! How could you be so stupid?
That's funny as hell.
We tried same thing. We destroy Pearl Harbor. You not have History Channel? Oh, you don't know. They retaliate by dropping 2 bomb. Not 10 bomb, not 200 bomb, not 1,000 bomb, 2 bomb. The blast was so big.
That's enough.
What?
I said, and that's enough.
The blast was so big, our penis got smaller.
We're going to hell. That's like saying that the only reason Oppenheimer wasn't released in Japan yet is because they already saw it in 3D almost 70 years ago. No, I mean almost 80 years ago. That is. You want to tell an offensive joke? That's how you do it.
Oh! I haven't laughed that hard since I was a little girl, thank you. Anyways.
The plan mostly goes according to, plan, until they realize that Godzilla is just too goddamn heavy. So eventually, reinforcements show up in the form of that one happy-go-lucky guy with his arm in a sling.
Yeah, from Koichi's minesweeping team, the only guy out of a 4-man crew who is not prior military.
The plan mostly goes to plan, but then Godzilla resurfaces, almost looking skeletal, and about to use his atomic breath while he is regenerating. Not while regenerating, but you know what I mean. It's very clear that he's in the early stages of regeneration. And then, obviously, he starts to ready up his atomic breath, and then everything just fucking slows the fuck down real fucking quick.
Yeah, it's like super dramatic. It's like everything just goes dead silent.
It's one of those, well, this is it, we're fucked. Or one of those, hi, you're probably wondering how we got here.
It's a very anime kind of moment, because you notice that happens in a lot of anime, has a scene like that.
And finally, Koichi comes out of nowhere, and then right as Godzilla's about to fire, he flies the plane into the mouth, detonating the explosives, and one of Godzilla's most brutal defeats, blowing his fucking head off. And the remaining energy inside Godzilla causes the rest of his body to disintegrate. Now, Godzilla was defeated in a similar way in the 2001 film Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, where there's a drill submarine inside Godzilla which drills out of him, and out of anger he tries to fire his atomic breath at the 2 people in front of him, the 2 survivors, but instead of coming out of his mouth, it starts blowing out of his body till it eventually blows him the fuck up. Like, you saw the glowing of blue energy, like, they look like almost literal blue flames as Godzilla's body started to fall apart into the ocean.
Yeah, oof.
I'll be honest, I genuinely thought that Koichi was a goner, but then here he comes out of the sky.
I figured they were gonna do something like that, like, what was the mechanic's name? Tachibana. Like, I figured when they were showing Tachibana and his crew fixing this prototype plane, and he notices this one lever, which you could just safely assume is for like an ejector seat. I was like, okay, he's going to tell Koichi about the ejector seat. He's going to jettison himself out at the exact last minute right before the plane hits Godzilla's mouth.
Fuck you, I was right! Fuck you, I was right! Fuck you, I was right!
I remember leaning over whispering to Lily that he's won the gulag and he's re-parachuting into the battlefield. And she slapped me in the arm. At that point, she was 5 months pregnant. She was not dealing with my shit.
Right.
Call back to the intro of this video.
Right.
That's the reason I'm currently hiding from her, is because I made a mistake of eating her chocolate. She turns into Godzilla when I eat her chocolate. Not just during this pregnancy, but also when it was before she got pregnant and it was her time of the month. Yeah, let's not get into that.
She's gonna watch this video anyway, so...
Love you, Lily. He parachutes and he's reunited with everyone. Obviously, there's a feeling of celebration in the air because ding dong, the bitch is dead.
Right.
I like Godzilla, but there were a few moments during his rampage I'm like, wow, Goji, you are a dick. It was the first time I was actually hoping they were gonna kill or at least defeat Godzilla. Because as much as I love this Godzilla design, I love watching Godzilla stomp shit, I actually found myself hoping that they were gonna defeat him. Because, like I said, it was the first time watching a Godzilla movie and I actually cared about the humans. It's one of those movies where I went in, wanted just to go in for the monster action, but found myself actually caring about the humans as well.
That seems to be a widespread thing amongst people who have seen the movie. Like, I was seeing it all over Twitter, and I was even hearing about it from friends of mine who were still working at the theater. People were going into it not really expecting much. Like, even non-Godzilla fans who just wanted something to go and see were going into it and coming out being like, yeah, that was actually a really good movie, and they were really invested in Koichi's story. It's like, no wonder Gareth Edwards was jealous of this movie, because it did the one thing that he completely botched. You know?
But then Koichi then hears word that his lover survived, and they're reunited. There's obvious... I'll admit, I fucking cried at this scene both times I went and saw the movie in the theater. That earlier scene where it showed her push him into the alley before she was blown the fuck away, I thought she was gone.
I'm kind of in the field of I don't make assumptions unless I see a body, because I've seen too many movies pull that trick on us on the viewer, and I'm like, yeah, unless I'm seeing a body.
I was kind of hoping the same for Bryan Cranston's character in 2014.
Oh, that was too much to ask for.
I was hoping that he was going to survive his injuries somehow. Even though before I went and saw the movie, I got too excited and read the plot on Wikipedia and it said he was going to die, but I was like, maybe someone put it there to throw us off. Nope, he's fucking dead. Damn you, Gareth Edwards.
Right. That was one of the dumbest fucking writing decisions I've seen in a long while.
Did you notice that moving mark that was on Noriko's neck?
Yeah, it was like she had a bruise that had gone sentient. I don't know if that has something to do with radiation sickness, like she might have picked up radiation sickness from being in Godzilla's shockwave, or what? It's
been speculated that maybe that's a sign that either something Godzilla-like is going to come out of that, or she's going to turn into like a little Godzilla humanoid.
Ugh.
There was clearly some form of living activity there.
Yeah, which I know Yamazaki has hinted at wanting to do a sequel if he can, if Toho would let him.
Well, if it gets a sequel, it'll be the first time since 2003 that a Japanese Godzilla film got a direct sequel.
Yeah, which, I mean, from what I understand, this movie has hit over $100 million at the box office.
Yep, it sure has.
Globally.
And on a $15 million budget, that's great. I think it's made more than Shin did in the US.
Probably. It might be the highest grossing Godzilla movie, the highest grossing Toho Godzilla movie so far. Well, oh yeah, Shin Godzilla closed out its run at $78 million US. So
part of that comes from the fact that it wasn't a wide release like -1 was. I had to drive to a theater 3 hours away with a friend just to see it in an American theater.
Which, I mean...
Shout out to Charlie!
Shin was still the highest grossing Godzilla movie from Toho until -1 came out.
Right. Speaking of Shin, back in 2022, the movie Shin Ultraman came out, and I think it's worth noting that for one of the monsters, there's a monster in Ultraman called Gomez. In the original Ultraman series, he was just a recycled Godzilla suit. For his appearance in Shin Ultraman, it's worth noting that it looks like they took the Shin Godzilla design and just worked it into a new Gomez design because of the wide eyes and the mouth. Yeah, several classic Ultraman monsters were actually recycled Godzilla suits. Even one where it's basically a differently colored Godzilla suit with the only change being a frill around its neck called Jirass. Well, yeah, Ultraman kicked your ass.
Nice.
Me and the rest of the fan base have been making that joke for years, okay? But anyway, the final closing shot of this film, I think it should warrant a sequel on its own, because it shows a large chunk of Godzilla's flesh survived.
Yep.
And it begins to fucking Deadpool regenerate.
Yeah, just as it's sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
Meaning that Godzilla is going to return, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not within the next few months, but maybe not within the next few years, but he's going to return someday. I personally wouldn't mind if the sequel took place 10, 15 years later, or shit, maybe even Godzilla comes back in modern day and fights another monster.
Yeah, I mean, who knows how long it would take him to fully regenerate himself. I mean, it happens pretty quickly in the movie, but those were flesh wounds compared to how he gets it in the end of the movie, so it's like, I mean,
It's a flesh wound.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't. Well, what's that then? I've heard worse. You liar. Come on, you pansy.
But the question is, if there is a sequel and he fights a monster in the sequel, is it going to be a reimagining of an old Toho kaiju or something new and original?
Well, I am not in the habit of speculating. In my opinion, speculation culture is just kind of ugh.
I kind of want it to be like an almost reimagining of the sequel to the original Godzilla Raids Again, where he fights Anguirus or Angulus. They tended to pronounce the name differently as the series goes on, but basically one of Godzilla's allies in the late 60s going into early 70s. In terms of the original, I'm going to steal a quote from James Rolfe. It's Godzilla-thon.
Now, Godzilla and Anguirus, well, they don't like each other. I don't know what it was, but I recall Godzilla saying something about Anguirus' mom, but I don't know. They just fucking hate each other's guts, and Anguirus is a worthy foe, but Godzilla just kicks his ass.
It's also worth noting that in Godzilla Raids Again, the suit was slimmed down a lot from what it was in the original because, well, that suit was too damn heavy, and, well, having to fight another giant monster would just make things worse.
Well, now they don't have that problem if they're doing the monsters full CG in Japan now.
I think I read earlier today that the guy who does the motion capture for Godzilla and the Monsterverse also did the motion capture for Colossus and Deadpool 2. But overall thoughts on Godzilla -1?
I'm not in the habit of assigning scores to rate a movie's quality. I prefer to just say, okay, it's a good time. This movie was an 11 out of 10 for me.
Hey, man. Can y'all tell I'm a dad with how much I'm yawning?
It was a movie that I went into with neutral expectations. I go into every movie I see for the first time with neutral expectations. This one I was kind of 50-50 on when I went in, and I wound up loving it more than I expected to.
Right.
It's easily a top 10 of 2023 for me.
Amen. I gave it 5 stars, 2 thumbs up. Same rating I gave Welcome to Raccoon City, which, fuck you, it's still a good Resident Evil movie. It's not the best movie, but it's a good Resident Evil movie.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't really have like a top 10, a fully formed top 10 list of my favorite movies from last year. I just know there's a few that I saw that I really like and I would put on there. I know -1 is easily in, if not the top 10, then at least the top 5. I know Oppenheimer is somewhere in that list.
I thought Oppenheimer was alright.
I know Sound of Freedom is somewhere in there.
Yeah, remember when the news media was trying to drag that movie through the mud?
Well, of course, because how many of them were friends with Epstein?
That's like when Jimmy Kimmel called Aaron Rodgers a tinfoil hatter for wanting to know who was on the Epstein's list. And it's like, tell me you're on Epstein's client list without actually telling me.
Well, supposedly Jimmy Kimmel actually isn't on the list. The only time I found him even remotely funny was when Corolla was carrying him when they were doing the Man Show.
Yeah, never seen it.
But to summarize, I think Godzilla -1, if it's not still playing in theaters, it should be on hitting like video on demand sometime soon.
I mean, Shin Godzilla took a little over a year before it got a DVD release.
And then they're gearing up to re-release Godzilla -1 in black and white.
They actually already did it 3 days ago.
Okay, so they have, and they're calling it, and it's called Godzilla -Color.
If it comes to the United States, as if I need another excuse to see it.
Right.
As soon as I have the money, I kind of want to see if I can buy one of those -1 cups off of eBay.
Well, I'm seeing that not only is Gareth Edwards a fan of -1, but so is Michael Dougherty, Guillermo del Toro, and Adam Wingard.
Imagine Guillermo del Toro making a Godzilla movie.
You know, I've only seen 2 of del Toro's movies so far. One of them was... I've seen Blade 2, and I've seen Crimson Peak. And that's about it.
What about Pacific Rim?
I have not watched Pacific Rim. I've got it in my Blu-ray collection. I just haven't sat down to watch it yet.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah, there's a bunch of shit in my collection I still haven't watched. But I'm scooping it up anyway because all the stores are trying to convince us that physical media is dead, which is
fucking retarded.
Yeah, buddy, there is still a market for physical media. And it's like, I don't give a fuck how much you want to shove streaming and video on demand in my face. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, we're not buying something you can take away from us at any time. Like the recent bullshit with Ubisoft. Like, apparently if you don't log in within 30 days, apparently it erases your game purchases.
Yeah. Where it's like, you're not even buying your games or your movies. You're paying for the privilege of having them sit in your library. As much as I love Steam, and I use Steam a lot, it's a glorified rental service. And we're talking movies here. Movie streamers, Netflix and Prime and Hulu and all the rest, these companies are glorified goddamn rental services. And I have an entire rant on this, which I'm not going to get into. Yeah, to summarize -1, if it's still playing in your area, absolutely go fucking see it. It's
Japanese with English subtitles, so you might have to read your way through the movie, but I understand Japanese, so I didn't really need the subtitles.
Yeah, and if you're one of those people who complains about oh, I don't want to read when I'm watching a movie, learn to fucking multitask.
Amen.
It's like you people sit in front of your TV scrolling through your phone while you're watching movies and television shows. You can fucking multitask.
Fucking man. Though I can't say too much. I do the same thing, and so does Lily, and I really don't want her to kill me.
I'll admit, I tend to scroll through Twitter while I'm watching something on YouTube or whatever.
Background noise.
I don't have anything to add. Do you have anything to add?
Godzilla's 70th anniversary, motherfuckers. That's it.
Okay. And on that note, thanks for watching, and we will see you all next time.
Bye-bye.